Darrell and Patsy got married. So this is Darrell. Say hi, Darrell.
Hi, Darrell.
And he's gonna answer a few questions for us. I guess I should turn this way when I speak. Where were you born?
I was born in Vedas, West Virginia, January the 20th, 1934.
1934, okay. This is 2001, so you are how old today?
I'm 67.
67, okay. Your parents' names?
Clayton and Wanna Wall.
How about your grandparents' names?
Grandparents is, on my father's side was Lydie, and I'm not sure what his wife's name was. She died when I was very small. On my mother's side was Charles and Ivy Hickman.
Were they all from Vedas? Or?
No, the Walls was from Vedas, and the Hickmans was from, well, a couple of different places. I'm not sure. Crawford, West Virginia is where they lived most of their life before they moved to Ohio.
They lived in Ohio a pretty long time. That's where, I guess, where I remember from.
Right, they lived in Winterset, Ohio for many, many years.
Let's see. Tell me something that you remember about your parents.
Well, of course, I remember a lot of things, but I guess maybe when I was small, we always had something to play with. Of course, those days weren't really, people didn't have a lot of money, but it seemed like we always had toys to play with, cars, and we had billy goats and ponies and all those good things, sleds and ice skates, and but we always had fun time.
Where do you get those things in Vedas? I've been to Vedas before. I can't quite picture where you get toys.
Well, you don't get a lot of those things in Vedas. You get most of them in Weston, but my grandfather's store, well, of course, he had about everything there was in the line of clothing and food, and you name it, he had it. It was really a country general store. It had gasoline and the whole works.
And that was, is it Lida? Is that who had the store?
Yeah, Lida Clayton. Lida Clark, I guess, is really what it was. I used to think it was the other, but it's Lida, L-I-D-A, Clark.
So he probably got you some deals on stuff too.
Yeah.
Whatever deals were available at that time in the 30s. How about talking about your siblings?
Okay, I have 3 children. Cynthia Lee is the oldest, and Darrell Jr. Tony is the middle one, and Sandra Ann is the youngest daughter. And they live in, of course, Cindy lives in Gastonia, North Carolina, and Tony lives in Midlothian, Virginia, and Sandy lives in Akron, Ohio. And each one of them has 2 children each.
And who were they? Who were the grandkids?
Okay. Cindy's is Robbie and Patrick, and Tony's is Kellen and Travis, and Sandy's children is Darrell and Donnie. And Darrell's the only grandchild.
They had 5 boys before you had it.
I had 5 boys before I had the girl, the granddaughter.
Going back to your parents, do you remember any particular advice at any point they gave you?
Well, I guess maybe when I was in high school, growing up front row, I was always trying to stay out of trouble, and of course I did most of the time. Sometimes it didn't work. Yeah.
Okay. Who, other than the immediate family, had an effect on you in your early life, and why?
Well, really, there's a lot of people. My grandparents, of course, I was very close to my grandfather Wall at Vedas. Of course, I've seen him about every day. And also, my mom's sister, Lita Osborne, we've seen her quite frequently, and I spent time with them, different times, staying overnight. And in the summer, I'd spend a week or 2 with them, and they were all good people and good Christian people, and I always enjoyed being with them.
How about your brother? Who?
Okay, I have one brother. He was a twin, and the girl, Clarice May, she died at 3 days old. And of course, my brother is 4 years older than I am. He was born in 1930. He lives in Sharpsburg, Georgia, and he's retired from Delta Airlines. And of course, his wife, and then he has 2 children, and he has 2 grandchildren.
Okay. This one you kind of already answered, but maybe one of your best childhood memories. How about a favorite toy or a game that you had?
Well, I remember I had a car that back in those days, I don't know what, it was metal, but I have no idea what it would cost, but I'm sure back at that time it was expensive for the money that was being made at that time, and of course we kept that for a long time, and it was one that you pedaled. Mm-hmm. And but I remember having a lot of fun with it.
Mm-hmm. You said something about a goat?
Yeah, we had a billy goat, and he'd butt you, and my mom was scared to death of him. He'd come around and butt her all the time. He'd eat her flyers up, and but we'd hook a wagon to him, and he'd pull us around on the wagon, and sometimes we'd get him up on a little hill, and he'd come down that hill real fast. We'd be on a little old wagon.
What was his name?
I don't remember what the name of the goat was. Jim was the name of the horse. Pony, rather.
Jim
the pony, yeah. He was blind one eye, and I don't know whether he could see out the other one or not, but he was very gentle, and we hook a sled up to him, and especially in the wintertime, we had a bigger sled we'd hook up to him, and mother, of course, mother would ride too, and my brother and myself, and we could have a good time on that. Like we also did ice skating, which one time the ice broke, and Mother and Junior went in, and I was too far behind because I couldn't keep up with them, and so I had to go to the neighbor's house and call for help, and of course they got out, but then I had to go home and get them some clothes, and of course I wasn't very old at the time, maybe 5, 6 years old.
Can't quite picture Grandma while ice skating and going in.
Yeah, well, she was. What it was is she was on the sled, and my brother was pushing her. He had the ice skates on. She was on a sled, and they got the weak spot in the ice, and they went. I seen them going down, and of course.
It's funny now, I guess. Probably wasn't real funny.
Yeah. But it was a lot of fun.
Well. Probably wasn't real funny.
Yeah. But it was a lot of fun.
Well. Okay, how about, do you remember what your first car was?
My first car was a 1954 Plymouth Belvedere. It was coral and ivory.
Ooh.
It was coral bottom and ivory top, and the seats were coral and ivory inside. They were leather seats.
Wow.
It was a sharp car back then.
Yeah, it sounds like it. First car.
And then many after that. But that was the first one
First one. Your health's been real good. And what do you attribute to your good health?
Well, I really don't know. Maybe it was seemed like in my mom's side of the family that all those folks lived to be a ripe old age. I'm not sure. My great-grandmother, I think, was all over 100.
Wow.
And my great-grandmother, then she was way up in her 90s. And, of course, my grandmother, she was up in her 90s. And, of course, my mom is soon be 91, and her sister, Aunt Lita, is 93. And one is deceased, is Opal Bond, and she was 93 a couple years ago when she passed on. And then they have a brother, Preston Hickman. He is 87 years old. And of course, the three that are living in pretty good health, considering their age. They all live by themselves. So I think that's remarkable.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm going to inherit some of that.
Yeah, in the genes. Yeah. Let's see. What values do you consider the most important to pass on to future generations? Say even Robbie and Patrick's kids, or maybe someday watching this, what kind of like advice would you give to all the generations beyond you?
Well, I'm not sure. It's kind of hard to really say everyone's an individual, but I think overall, I think the main thing is that the kids, and while they're young, of course, while they're growing up, and after they're grown, is to try to keep themselves out of trouble, and I think most of the children do that. Not get mixed up with the wrong crowd, and if they attend church and they attend church regularly, I think they'll live up to that, and there won't be a lot of problems in their life. Of course, we all have problems, but I mean, hopefully nothing drastic will ever happen to any of them. And I think it's people that go to church and go on a regular basis, and they're involved with their church, they're always with good people, and they're not hanging out on the street corners and so forth.
What have you learned from the highs and low points in your life that you're willing to share with us here?
Well, of course, naturally, the low points were, of course, when we were young, and of course, we didn't have any money. We had enough money to buy food and clothes, and of course, that was just payday to payday. And of course, as time went on, well, of course, that changed, and then, of course, it seems as though later on we had sufficient money to live on, and that's the main thing, is that we don't have abundance of money, but we have enough money to live on and take care of ourselves.
Any particular religious experience that stands out to you?
Well, I don't know. I was saved when I was very young. I'm not exactly sure whether I was 9 or 10, but it was somewhere around that. And of course, then I was never baptized, but I was saved at that time, and I went all through the years. And of course, I went to the Methodist Church in Front Royal, Virginia, for a number of years, and then when I moved to Ohio, well, we joined we attended the Akron Baptist Temple. So to join the Akron Baptist Temple, we had to be baptized. We had to be submerged. And of course, that was when we were a little older. I'm not exactly sure how old we were, but we were in our late 20s or early 30s, something like that. And that was an experience, because I think yourself and Cindy were baptized at the same time, I believe, wasn't it?
Yeah, about 13 or 14.
Yeah,
I think.
and then Sandy, I think maybe was baptized later. I'm not really sure. Patsy will know, but that was a good experience, being at the Akron Baptist Temple. And, of course, never will forget Dr. Billington and, of course, his son and the rest of the staff. They were all a large church, but they were very nice people, very friendly people. Enjoyed going there very much.
Let's see, going back to that, you talked about Front Royal and Ohio and that. So you were born in West Virginia. So how long did you live in West Virginia before you moved to Front Royal?
I was 11 years old when we moved to Front Royal, and I was there. I started in the 7th grade in Front Royal, and I went through and graduated in the 12th grade there. I graduated from high school. And at that time, that's when I got married and went into service and ruined my life.
It was all good up to then. That was Warren County High School, right?
Warren County High School.
Was that 7th through 12th? That was high school?
Yeah, what they had there was unusual. Of course, it's not like that today, but they had the 7th and 8th grade there, plus the rest of the high school. So really, when you got to the 7th grade, you was in the high school building. And of course, I don't know how long it was before they changed that. It was way after I left there. But it went back to a 4-year school.
So I was ready to, I guess the next part of that was when you moved to Ohio, but there's actually, you're saying something else in between there when you graduated from high school.
Well, yeah, then I went into service, and went into service, and I was stationed at San Antonio, at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas. I did part of my training there, basic training. At that time, there were so many people joining the service, and of course that was during the Korean War, and of course there's a lot of people being drafted. But anyway, I spent part of my basic training in San Antonio, and then they transferred us to Wichita Falls to finish our basic training, which we had barracks there in San Antonio. We had tents, and
wow.
there were just so many people going through the basic training, and of course I graduated from the basic training in Wichita Falls, Texas, and then after that I was transferred to Keesler Air Force Base in Biloxi, Mississippi, which I stayed there until I was discharged in December 1954.
Okay, so then from there you went back to Front Royal?
Went back to Front Royal, and we lived in Front Royal, and then after a period of time there, we went to move to Ohio, and we lived in Akron a little over 20 years, and of course we stayed there in Akron until I transferred to Charlotte, North Carolina, and that was in 1979, January 1979, I transferred to Charlotte, and we've been here ever since. Of course, we've made one move since we came here, but about 5-6 years ago we moved into a new home. But I've enjoyed this part of the country. It's really nice. It's you do have the 4 seasons, but the winter is not very extreme. You can play golf about the year round.
That's a good one. Okay. Let's see. How about the memory of your first grandchild? And that would be Robbie, right?
Yeah, that was Robbie, and of course they lived in Lancaster, South Carolina, and Robbie was born in Charlotte, and of course everybody was that was a happy day, and of course I think they had all kind of company from then on to see their child or our grandchild, and of course then of course after Robbie a little over a year, well, of course Patrick was born, and then it just went on down the line to 4 more of them, and they all turned out to be good kids, that's for sure. They had nice parents, and they raised their children up in church, which I think means a lot.
What one thing or what things would you want your great grandchildren to know about you?
There's a few things I don't want them to know, but mostly that I was hopefully a good parent, a good grandparent, and that I didn't cause any of them a lot of trouble, and they didn't cause me a lot of trouble, and we got along real well together, and especially when they were younger, why they were really a bundle. They was always riding the tractor through all of them. Anytime I was mowing, one of them was riding the tractor, and they enjoyed that, and I enjoyed that. And, I just enjoyed all my children and grandchildren, and hopefully someday I'll have some great grandchildren.
Yeah. Okay, let's see, tell us about a few different friends that you've had over the years, maybe as a kid, maybe as a teenager, a young adult, further along in life, some of the friends that come to mind? Well,
from my early days in school, of course, I lost contact with all those people. Of course, when I moved to Front Royal, of course, I picked up a different acquaintances and of course friendships and best buddies and all that, and of course carried them all through school and even after school. And of course I still go to the reunions, and I see some of those folks at reunion time that I've been with since the 7th grade, so that's been a long time. And but one of my best friends graduated from high school when I did, and we both went into service together. And we went through basic training together, and then after that we were split up.
Who's that?
Charles Holloway. He is now deceased, but he was in the Air Force, and then he got out of the Air Force and he joined the Navy, and he made a career out of the Navy. He was in Vietnam. He was in charge of a PT boat. You know, runs on the water. And, I'm not that familiar with it, but I guess he was in heavy fire there maybe sometime. But anyway, he survived that. But
so you guys were friends in high school, and then through, did you go to boot camp?
yeah, we went to training together, yeah, and then we'd see each other all the time after that, because he would come home and I would come home, but around the holidays or whenever. But a lot of friends like that. I mean, I had friends there in the neighborhood, and we remained friends up until today. And of course, some of them are deceased. There's quite a few of them that are deceased. My real close neighbors, Harold Miracle, he's been deceased for a little while, and then some of the other neighbors that are close that I went to school with, they're deceased too. But of course, there's still a lot of them living. And we always had a good time there with our neighbor kids.
Let's see, how about the first time you saw some things? I'll throw out some things, maybe you remember some of them, some of you don't, but maybe inventions or things. First time you ever saw something like either TV or frozen foods, microwaves, credit card, air conditioning, a dishwasher, a dryer, any of those kind of things. Like, remember first time you saw a TV set?
Well, yeah, first time I saw a TV set was in Main Street in Front Row. They had one in the display, and they had it on.
Oh, like in the window or something? Or in
yeah, the storefront. And then it wasn't too long after that until my parents bought a little larger TV. And but I never really watched much TV until I got older. I just wasn't interested in it. Of course, they didn't have a lot of sports on then at that time. There was a lot of programs I didn't watch, but it was good to have it. But like I say, I didn't really watch it that much until I got older.
Do you remember where you were when Kennedy was assassinated?
Yes, I sure do. I was on when Kennedy got assassinated. I was on Haynes Street in Akron, Ohio.
Remember what street you were on?
Yes, sir.
Wow.
And it was. I'm not sure the exact time, but somewhere around midday, I guess maybe it was. I'm not sure. But I remember being there, and I was with this other guy, and we went in this house, and of course then that's all there was on TV at that time, was the Kennedy assassination.
Wow. Anything like, how about like, see, you wouldn't be very old, but you remember when Pearl Harbor happened, took place? You wouldn't be like...
I remember my mom and dad had a radio, and they always listened to a certain newsman in the evening, and of course during the Pearl Harbor attack, and of course through those times, well, of course we'd catch up with the news every evening, and they'd go through the whole thing and explain everything that they could about it. But and of course then in later years, a few years ago, I don't know, it's been maybe 8 years ago, or I don't know when it was now, we went to Hawaii, and of course we went to Pearl Harbor, and we've seen what it was there at that time. But, really sad, really sad.
Let's see. Just scrambled up my papers here. I kind of lost track of where. Let's see. How about at the present time? What do you enjoy doing most? What do you spend your time with?
Well, right now, of course, I try to play golf on Tuesdays and Thursdays and Saturdays. Of course, that hasn't always been the case here the last couple of months, but up until that time, it was pretty much golf 3 days a week, unless we were out of town. But here recently, we've been going so much that I really haven't played that much this year. I'm lucky if I play once or twice a week, probably. But I still enjoy it, and the golf, and I will get back to probably playing 3 days a week soon. But,
any really treasured memories that come to mind? Almost anywhere from the beginning of your memory to the Through now, anything that comes to mind? It's a real general question. Way out there, but anything?
Well, I just can't pin one right at this time.
Yeah. I couldn't answer that either. Let's see. Let me, hate to hold the show up here, but I'm just kind of glancing over these. How about, what are you most grateful for in life?
Well, I think, start with, I think you're grateful for your mother and father, and of course also your grandparents, and then along comes your wife and Patsy, and then of course after that your children, and also your grandchildren, and I think the world of all of them, and I hope I get to spend many, many more years with all of them.
How would you like to be remembered after you die?
Well, at this point in life, I think that things change, and I think at this time I would like to be remembered as a good father and a good grandfather and a good husband. I think the older I get, the more I appreciate my family, and I think maybe that holds true with a lot of folks. But of course, you always love your family, and you appreciate them and what they do for you and what you can do for them.
I'm going to bring Patsy in for a few minutes, and I'm going to bring you back and ask you a couple of questions about work and marriage. Those two things we'll cover again in a
That would be fine.
All right. Let's see. Okay, here we are again, and again today is June 15th, 2001, the 50th wedding anniversary of Darrell and Patsy. This is Patsy. Say hi, Patsy. Okay, and we're going to ask a few questions here. Will you?
Okay, I'll do my best.
Where were you born?
I was born in Front Royal, Virginia,
When was that?
February the 23rd, 1935.
Okay. What are your parents' names?
Mildred and Earl Walton, great parents.
Great parents.
Great parents.
Who are your grandparents?
On mother's side, it was Brenty and Bernie Groves, and on daddy's side, it was Rebecca and Charlie Walton.
Tell us something about your parents.
Like I said, they were great parents. Daddy was strict, mother made up for it. But they were great. They gave us everything that we needed. Maybe not everything we actually wanted at the time, but everything we needed. And they was always there for us. Daddy worked on the railroad. When he was gone, mother was there, and she was a great friend and mother.
Tell us about your brothers and sisters.
Okay. I had a brother. He was Earl Walton Jr., but we called him Mickey. He got killed when he was 39 years old in a car wreck, and we really missed him, but he left 5 wonderful children that we've all just loved through the years. Maybe don't see him as much as we'd like, but we've loved him. And Ray, his wife, has just been a wonderful mother to the children. As I was growing up with Mickey, he thought he was my protector. And it so happened he liked Darrell, so he didn't have to protect me from Darrell, and I guess that's why I married him.
He got through the filter kind of thing.
Yeah. And then I have Joyce, my older sister. She's living in Virginia now, but we are so close, probably closer now than we've ever been in our life. Always, as we grew up, we had to share the same bedroom, and of course, we had that same sisterly argument, but basically, we got along very good. she wasn't my protector, but I did look up to her. I just can remember that Joyce and Mickey both, since I was the youngest, kind of like to tickle me and hold me down and just do things to aggravate. But basically, I had a wonderful family.
Those years growing up, can you remember some incident or some, whether it was just like a one-time thing with your brother and sister, or maybe just a general kind of thing that happened?
Let's see. What could have happened?
You guys didn't break the shifter robe, I know that.
No,
We did.
the grandchildren broke the ship rope. Let me think. I got just.
What about like it's school, even in high school, where let's see.
Well, yes, I was always either Mickey Walton's sister or Joyce Walton's sister, and I was never. No, well, sometimes I was known as Earl Walton's daughter. I really thought that was my name for a long time, but no, with them it was. I more or less followed in their foot tracks, but not to the point where I wasn't my own individual. All of us were. But as I say, they like to gang up on me because I happen to be the youngest, and they, as I think my children kind of ganged up on our youngest daughter. But they, one thing special I just can't, because it was just, we had a good family.
Other than your immediate family there, who else had a big effect on your early life?
There was a lady named Irene Rickard. She was the lady that picked out my name and told Mother told Mother if she had a little girl and she could name her, that she would make all of her clothes for a year. Well, I was a girl, and Irene did name me, and she made my clothes until she died, and I was probably about 16 years old, or maybe even older than that. And there was another lady, and her name was Magdalene Ruffner, and our parents were friends. I mean, our parents and Magdalene and her husband were friends before we were born. And we just kind of grew up, and that was like a second mother. I knew that if anything I needed or anything was bothering me, I could go to Magdalene or Irene, either one. And still friends with their children.
Okay. As a kid, do you remember any particular toy or game or anything like that you might have had?
Yes, I do. Sound like Aunt Lita. But I remember, I don't know, I was probably 6 or 7 years old. Of course, I was a little slow. But I still thought that Santa Claus brought my toys. And one year, Joyce and Mickey decided they was going to prove to me there was no Santa Claus. And they found our toys and showed me my little rubber doll that came in a suitcase, and it had a little bottle with it. And they told me that Mother and Daddy had already bought our presents. And I said no, that Santa Claus couldn't get to see everybody on Christmas Eve, so he just brought ours a little early. And they never convinced me that there was no Santa Claus.
You're able to rationalize most anything.
In most anything.
Yeah.
Well, if I don't want to believe it, I'm not going to believe it.
Yeah, that's a good one to hang on to. Santa Claus is, as long as you can do that one, that's a good one.
I did.
How about the first time you ever drove a car? You remember that?
Oh, yes. I drove with my daddy. And like I say, he was the one that was stricter on us than Mother was. But Daddy had to, even though I was going to put the brakes on, a long time before it was time, he would tell me I had to put the brakes on. Or not to go too fast, even though he had a lead foot. And but I do remember him taking me out to the highway, and he would make me pull up in one of the parking places and then back up, and then I'd have to back into the parking places. And I guess he was a pretty good teacher.
Did you drive one of those big trucks one time or something?
Yeah, it worked at Freightliner.
Oh,
Is that what you mean?
Well, I was thinking Granddad had some trucks.
No, I never,
You
he
drove
never
the
let
truck?
me drive those.
Okay, yeah.
No, Daddy had a trucking business. And Mickey got to, of course. He was the boy. But we never got to.
Okay. You've had such great health throughout your life. You're 66.
66.
And what do you attribute to great health?
Clean living. No, I'm thankful that God gave me a healthy body, and I've tried very hard through the years to take care of it. If I have a problem, I go to the doctor. I try to do what the doctor tells me to do. But basically, I have had very few serious illnesses. Of course, I had my 3 children and no problems with them, and just not in the hospital that often. I was at one point. I had they thought it was a spot on my lung, and way back then, they thought it was cancer. That was an immediate thought. And but after several weeks of testing, they just found out that it was nothing that was going to cause any problem. So
When was that?
that was 9 months after Sandy was born.
Oh, right. Wow.
It was, see, Sandy was born in 56,
Mm-hmm.
so it was 57.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And they had a great doctor, and he basically told Mother and Darrell, told Darrell and Joyce that they thought it was cancer. And they told Mother and Daddy. But it wasn't. God took it away, and I just give him all the credit.
Okay, how about the memory of your first grandchild?
Oh, gosh. Well, Robbie was born in October, and Sandy was getting married the 28th of October.
Mm-hmm.
So we came down, he was due in September, and we came to South Carolina, where they lived at the time, to be there when he was born. And of course, he was born when he wanted to be, and which was not in September. It was not until the 18th of October.
10 days before.
10 days before the wedding. And I didn't get to see him until Cindy and Terry brought him up to Ohio to the wedding. He was a beautiful little boy.
And then next in the grandkids is Patrick. Remember?
Yes, I remember the day he was born very well. Cindy had come to our house in North Carolina to we were going to go Christmas shopping and get all of her shopping done because Patrick was not due for several weeks. And on that night, though, the night that she got there, she wasn't feeling very well. And in the middle of the night, she realized that she was going to be going into labor. And I just kept telling her no, that she was fine. And by the next morning, we knew we had to get her to the doctor. And we did. She was put in the hospital. And we kept Robbie while Cindy and Terry was at the hospital. And I got impatient, waiting for Patrick to be born. So I went to, I just took off from the house, left Robbie with Darrell, and I went to on my way to the hospital, they called and said that, I was on my way to the hospital, but they called the house and said that Patrick was born. So I got there just shortly afterwards.
Let's see then.
Kellen.
Okay, Kellen will be next, okay?
Yes. I got a phone call on the 22nd of February from Tony from California, and he said, well, guess what, Mom? Our baby's going to be born on your birthday. Well, of course, I kind of perked up there quite a bit, and because Kathy was having a problem, and they was definitely going to take the baby the next day if she couldn't deliver. And so we waited by the phone that day, and finally they called and told us that Helen had been born. Donnie was one that we waited so many years for, because Sandy and Wayne had tried to have children for about, I think it was about 7 years. And they, finally, she was pregnant with Donnie, and we was waiting. She was in Ohio, and we did not go to Ohio to see him. And but they called and said they had a healthy little boy, which was just an answer to prayer, because Sandy had had a lot of problems.
And would be Travis?
Then we'd be Travis. Now, we went to Virginia when Travis was born. Not the day he was born, but we went following weekend. And, you know, you think, well, you've got 4 grandsons, and here's another one. But it's never been like that with us. It's always been 5 wonderful little boys. And if we had never had a little girl, it would have been wonderful. But we did have a little girl, too. But he was such a healthy little boy, and loving little boy. I just remember holding him and thinking what a miracle it is of birth.
But that would take us to Darrell.
Darrell. That takes us to Darrell. So Sandy called me, and she said, Mom, you got your little girl. Which did thrill me. I mean, like I said, I love my boys. And if I'd never had a little girl, that would have been all right. And since I did, she was just our little princess, we called her. And then they named her after Papa, and Darrell Jean after Darrell Jean. And it that just made her even more special. And it just topped off our family. She just really was a very precious little girl, and our little princess.
Okay, we're going to move to generations down the road that aren't even born yet, but so they see this tape at some point. What advice would you want to give? Let's say either
grandchildren.
Yeah, Patrick's kids, or even a generation after that, a couple of generations down the road. What kind of advice would you?
First advice is to love the Lord. The Lord has to stay first in your life, even though you love your parents so very much. You love your children so very much. But it's you have to love them, love the Lord first, and love and respect your parents. I'm going to brag a little, because my children did. They did love us and respect us, and that just means so much. It means so much to the parents, and it will to you in years to come. You don't always agree with your parents. I didn't always agree with mine, and I'm sure my children didn't always agree with me. And the grandchildren don't always agree with me. But just love them, love the children, love your parents, and above all, love the Lord.
Tell us about a couple of friends that you've had over the years, either when as a kid or a teenager, young adult, at any stage in life. Just a couple of people that come to mind.
Probably my oldest and dearest friend is Ann Ruffner Cooper. I've known her all my life. She was Magdalene that I talked about earlier. Magdalene was her mother, and we went all the way through school together. We stayed friends all through the years. When we was out of school, where I moved away, her husband was in the service, and she moved away for a long time, but we kept in touch as best we could. And now that we're older and retired, I'm saying older and retired, she's coming to my anniversary, and we still stay friends.
Tell me about some new things. Remember the first time you ever saw them? Either a new invention or thing. Here's some things that might be a TV, maybe a credit card, a dishwasher, air conditioning. Maybe the first time you saw it. Clothes dryer, electric blanket,
Well,
anything.
actually, the TV was the thing that just amazed me. Of course, for years we sat by the radio and listened to the radio, and it was exciting. You can't imagine it now, but it was very exciting to sit there and listen to the doors squeaking for, I can't remember now the name was, Inner Sanctum or something like that. And the good part was, even when we could not be home, we took our radio in the car. I mean, the car had a radio, so we could still keep right up with our stories. And but the first time I saw television, I just was amazed. And I was probably 14 years old before we ever got a TV. And it was just a little tiny brown picture that you couldn't hardly see anything. You could see like Red Skelton and Lucille Ball, which was great for us. It was amazing.
How about, do you remember where you were when you first heard that Kennedy was assassinated? Remember that?
I remember I was at work. I worked for NRM Corporation in Akron. And I worked in a glassed-in office back. And one of the girls came and said, "Have you all heard the president's been shot?" And of course, then the whole office was just waiting to hear something. And they came back in just a few minutes and said that he was dead. And it was just like losing a good friend. You know, you don't know. I guess I probably should have thought about world affairs first, but I didn't. I just felt like that we'd lost a good friend.
Do you think the world is a better or a worse place today than when you were a child?
My opinion, it's worse. Nothing was complicated when we were growing up. If I wanted to walk from my house to town, which was about a mile, I just got out and walked. I didn't worry about getting hurt or murdered, or you just never heard of things like that. In the movies, they were just so simple. They weren't something that was going to scare the life out of you. Of course, I like the love movies, and we had some wonderful ones, had some wonderful actors and actresses at that time. But now, instead of just going out in the field and playing ball with whatever ball and bat you happen to have, now we have to have special balls, special bats. We had a big old tree in our neighborhood, and somebody threw a rope over it, and we had a swing. And all the kids in the neighborhood would go swing. And now, unless you have a nice swing set, you don't do that. It was just much less complicated. And I really wish that we could go back to some of those things.
What's the best advice you ever received?
Oh boy.
Yeah, that was a toughie there.
Let's see, the best advice I ever received was,
how about from your parents? Do you remember some advice that you got from your parents?
Let's see, what would, respect yourself. Let's see, or just be yourself. Mother used to say about me that she said that I would just bring home any old person, any person around, and it never bothered me that it was whether they were high class, low class, or in between, because whoever was my friend, that was my friend. I was always myself, and I think that's what they taught me.
What are you most grateful for?
Oh, I'm grateful. The Lord gave me wonderful parents and wonderful family, grandchildren that have just been so special to me. I'm thankful for my church. I'm thankful for Darrell. I haven't mentioned him all along the way, but I'm very thankful for him. And I don't know that I would have come along as well as I have if it hadn't been for him. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's all right. At present, what do you most enjoy doing? Where do you spend your time? What do you do today?
Well, with the grandchildren, family. I'm happy as I can be. Just even it's more fun even without the parents there, because the children are more themselves. And a few years ago, I had the opportunity to have the kids come and stay with me. Donnie and Darrell and Kellen and Travis, and that was so special because there again they was just being themselves. I learned more about them then than I ever have. I enjoy working in the church. I enjoy playing golf when I get a chance. That's about it.
What are your favorite foods?
All of it.
Is there any food that you don't like? No. Go back to your...
All right, my favorite food is I love chicken. And I love potatoes. I take that after my mama. Steaks are great. I just soon have a good piece of chicken as a good steak, but I really need to sit back.
Either way is fine. Check that out either way.
Let's see, I like,
How about like desserts, any kind of or cookie or cake or anything like that?
okay, pecan pie probably is my favorite. Pie. I don't like plain old cakes. I like sweet cakes. Cakes that are, have a lot of icing on them. And I could just eat just the icing.
Of all those different cookies you make at Christmas time, which one is your favorite one?
I think the 7-layer cake. I think that's my favorite. Probably the sweetest one, and the one I shouldn't have. That is, that's probably it.
Okay, these you may not have, but do you have either a favorite color or a favorite song or a favorite flower, anything like that?
Purple's my favorite color. Favorite song right now, I'm not sure I could give you a favorite song. When Darrell and I were dating, or first married even, our song was P.S. I Love You, and that was because he was in the service, and it just seemed to fit so good for us.
What values do you consider most important to pass on to future generations?
Well, once again, it's love God, and if you love God and you follow what He teaches, I feel like that you're not going to go wrong. That you may, there may be hard times, but you have to remember that God is there. You have to lean on Him, and He may let you hurt, or He may let you get in some trouble or something. Maybe that's to teach you a lesson, or maybe it's just to let you know that He is still there and He will help you. But if you don't trust in Him, you can't, I won't say He won't help you. If you don't trust in Him, you won't feel that He has helped you.
Any particular religious experiences that stand out?
Well, of course, when all three of my children were saved, it was wonderful. And when I was saved, it was like I was just a young girl going to youth groups, and I was a Methodist, and we happened to visit a Baptist church, and they started talking about being saved, and I didn't know what they was talking about. And my friend that was with me at the time said, just sit still, just sit still. And that probably was my biggest mistake I did. But probably the proudest moment is when the kids were saved and baptized.
How would you like to be remembered after you pass away?
Believe it or not, I've thought about this. And
Just waiting for somebody to ask.
just waiting for somebody to ask that question. And I'll probably start crying again, but I just like for my family and everyone to remember me standing in the kitchen praying around with the whole family, holding hands and just standing there quietly. I just want them to know. Gosh, it's No, I just want them to remember me as a praying mother and grandmother.
So today, it's anniversary. People are coming. A lot of local people from the church. Who's coming from out of town that you know of?
Ann Ruffner, Cooper, and our friends from Ohio that we were great friends with when we lived there, Don and Brenda Spawn. My brother's son, Mark, and his family. Of course, my sister and her family, and Darrell's brother and his family. My mother-in-law cannot make it. She just can't make the trip. She's 90 years old, and we have an aunt that's 92 that wanted to come so bad and can't. Let's see who else from out of town. I know I'm going to miss somebody.
Yeah, I shouldn't ask you that.
Let's see.
I'm not sure I call this. Is Joyce, Tim, Sue?
Joyce, Tim, Sue, and Ryan and Drew, and Clayton and Janice, and Ronnie and Candy. Mark and his wife Chris with their children. I think we kind of counted in total with family and out-of-town guests, it would be around 40 people, and that's not counting the people here at the church.
Okay. Well, we're going to take just a minute break. We're going to come back with you and Darrell. We're going to talk about work, and then how you guys met and marriage and that whole thing. So
Okay,
let's take
that'll be good.